the morality of the Bible, the so-called absolute morals of religion, are inferior because they don't take into account the situation. Some people might do something because the Bible tells them to, which actually creates more harm than necessary, which means the Bible is actually an immoral book. And we see that with holy wars, and we see that with parents who deny taking their kids to the hospital because they think they can pray for them. The church's treatment of women, or of equal rights for all people, for gays or that, and so on. The absolute morality of religion tends on balance to be inferior to our natural humanistic. And humanism isn't some big capital H thing that we all have to ascribe to. It just means be a human being. When you see a headline, some Christians try to say, how can you doubt the innate depravity of humanity? Look at the headlines. Look at. And I point out, well, that's why they're headlines. Headlines are the weird things. When somebody commits one of these horrible headline crimes and you go, oh, how could they do that? What's the first thing you say? What an inhuman thing to do. We assume that the natural human thing to do is beneath the headlines. That the natural human thing is to treat each other fairly and with kindness. We assume not original sin, we assume original good in our species, that we want to care and to preserve. Why do you hold the door open for somebody behind you? Why do you do that? You don't know that person. They're never going to hold it for you, probably. Why do you do that? Is there something in us that I think if we champion that in our youth, instead of telling them that they are bad sinners that are going to go to hell, which can become like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if we will applaud and champion the original good that we all have instinctively and rationally, then we can go a lot closer to getting a world that has less violence in it, I think. Is there somebody else that you asked one yet? Are you in the back?
Yeah, so there's an atheist lobby down in Washington. I think Lori Lipman, I forget. Brown. And I wonder if your organization works at all with her. And I know that she had this, I guess it was kind of a game or competition, and the senator or the congressman from Alameda up in Oakland here was the first, the highest level government official that was willing to come out as an atheist. And I don't know, do you work closely with that organization? Or?
Yeah, it's called the Secular Coalition for America. And she retired a year ago. She's been replaced by Sean Fairclough, who's going to be speaking tomorrow in Santa Barbara. We're both talking at a humanist conference down there. And it is a lobbyist. It's not atheist. It's secular. In fact, there's a Jewish organization in the group, non-theistic Jews, which is interesting. They have all the Passover and all the stuff, but they don't believe in God. And they think you don't have to believe in God to be Jewish. And the leader of the group says, for us, Passover means pass the food over, you know. So. But it's a coalition of groups, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation pulled out of the coalition last year. We might rejoin it again. They were having some organizational problems, and we were just too busy with our lawsuits to get involved with that. So we pulled out for a year. We're probably going to reapply. We might reapply. Sean Fairclough is their new executive director, and it's direct lobbying of Congress. Although they're also trying to do grassroots too. They're trying to do that as well. But our organization really can't tell people how to vote on bills and that, to do lobbying. But the IRS allows a small percentage of any organization of their expenses, a small percentage of their expenses to be used for that kind of lobbying. And so we would fall into that small percentage. And it's issues of concern to seculars. It's any vote having to do with faith-based money or the Boy Scouts or any preference to religion and that. And and it's not a group you can join. You join one of the coalition groups. You can send money to them, of course. Every group wants money, but it's not a group that you can say I'm a member of, but you can be a supporter of the Secular Coalition for America. And that's new. You're right. It's a new thing. Here we go. Okay.
So what you were saying earlier about like how geography determines is the best definition of someone's religion. Like, do you notice like the opposite of that, like how like around different parts of the country, different parts are less religious than others?
Yeah, in the United States, there are pockets. About 15 or 60% of Americans right now will say they are non-religious. But in Seattle and Portland, it's more like 20 to 30%. And in Vermont, I think it's a little bit higher even. But down in Mississippi and Alabama, it's the other way around. So on the average, and if you take the demographic of your age, it's really high. It's pretty fascinating. All over the country, it's really high. To get into college, you have to be kind of smart, right, in the first place. And then in college, you're being exposed to plurality and diversity of ideas. So it makes sense that your generation is going to be less religious. Although a majority of your age still is quite religious. And some campuses is more than others. I hear this campus is a shining example of the love of Jesus, right? Well, the light shines brighter when the night is darker. That's how you should look at it. Yeah?
So some people are simply born gay. They're born homosexual, which immediately calls the question, what if the government had a national day of heterosexuality? Do you think that some people are just born religious? That there's something that they just cannot shake with their reason, no matter what they can do?
Are there some people that are born religious? No. Everybody's born an atheist. And then religion is something that is taught and indoctrinated. I think there's an awful lot of people. This is my own personal hypothesis, right? This might be wrong, and I don't know how you would test this, but I think, a species like ours has thousands of different traits or characteristics which vary across the population, and most of them vary in a kind of a bell curve, right? Most of us fall in the middle somewhere. When it comes to height, it's the bell curve, right? And when it comes to all sorts of other things, I think there's probably a gene or a cluster of genes or whatever you want to call it that also addresses what you might call a susceptibility to religion or mysticism or whatever. I'm just talking really loosely here, right? So I think if you look at our population as that kind of a bell curve, right? There are probably a lot of people over here that when they hear about a religion, lash right into it, right? And they're going to stay with it their whole life. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. There are some people over here who never, like James Randi. He was born an atheist, and he says he was never even slightly tempted. There are people who are raised in church with their believing brothers and sisters who are sitting there going, "What the heck are they talking about?" And maybe you were one of those. And my father-in-law, Paul, he was raised in a Christian church in Missouri, and his whole family, and his grandparents, they were all churchgoers. And he sat there as a kid going, "Ha ha ha, this is really ha." And then after a while, he said, "Huh? My parents are crazy. They actually believe this stuff." With him, it never took, right? I'm hypothesizing that he's the kind of person who falls over here, right? He's lucky. Our daughter Sabrina and Annie Laurie, Sabrina is a fourth-generation atheist on her mom's side. She's lucky. She doesn't know how lucky she is. Part of it is that the environment she's in, but part of it is just that, and that's what I think probably happens. I think even the people over here, though, if you didn't input that indoctrination as a child, very few of them would be religious. They might be kooky in some other way, maybe, but like in China right now, very few people actually believe in God, but they have like these folklore beliefs or other things, There are entire tribes. Daniel Everett's book, by the way, a great book is called Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes. He was a Christian missionary to the Amazon, this tribe called the Pinaha, and the Protestants came in after the Catholics gave up on this tribe. The Catholics were there for decades, didn't have a single convert. This Pinaha tribe on the banks of the river, the Meisei River. And they said this tribe is recalcitrant. Not a single one of them came to Jesus. And so the Protestants came in, the Summer Institute for Linguistics in Wycliffe, and they said, we're going to convert this tribe. And so Daniel Everett went down as a young missionary with his family. And to make a long story short, after a long time of him working with this tribe, there finally was one convert. Him. They weren't waiting on the banks, please convert. They thought he was coming to them because what they had is so great. They thought, he asked them, why do you think I'm here? And they said, because you like the way we live. And he said, and they had no belief in God. They had no afterlife. They had no idea of a soul. And they're happy. They had no depression. And he was trying to explain to them, he's trying to find some foothold. You know, missionaries are trying to find some way to connect the Bible with this local culture. So what's the point that